Welcome back to the Tickford 500. There's the view from the Whitman's Chocolate Lightship here at Sandown International Raceway. The cars all gridded up and ready to go. Mark Osler, let's have a look at the circuit.
Yep, Sandown International Raceway, 3.1 kilometres in distance. Look at those big long straights. That means it's a horsepower circuit, but it's also got very slow corners leading onto the straights. That means you need good power down to get maximum speed on the straights. It's also very tough on brakes, particularly at the end of that long back straight and the end of that long, recently named Peter Brock front straight. Very fast circuit and really a test of transmissions, particularly out of those slow corners.
Well, we've shown you the top 10. Let's show you the full grid now. Peter Brock and Mark Scape, of course, starting from pole position. And row 2, it's Mark Larkham and Andrew Mediki.
Starting out of row 2 is Glenn Seaton and David Parsons in the Ford Credit Falcon, Alan Jones and Jason Bright.
We go back to row 3, Jason Barguana and Mark Noske certainly opened a few eyes. Greg Murphy and Craig Lowndes.
Yeah, row 4, John Faulkner and Win Percy in the better electrical car. Wayne Gardner and Neil Crompton in the Coke Commodore start out of position 8.
We then go back to row 5. It's Dick Johnson, John Bow, Tony Longhurst and Charlie O'Brien.
Row 6, Larry Perkins and Russell Ingle in the Castrol Commodore. Stephen Johnson and the Kiwi, Craig Baird, start out of position 12.
We go back row 7. It's Stephen and Jim Richards, the father and son combination. Terry Finnegan and Peter Fitzgerald.
Out of row 8, Paul Romano and Alan Grice, 2 times Bathurst winner. Out of 15, John Trimble and Thomas Mazera out of position 16.
We keep on going back, row 9. The 2 young guys, Darren Hossack and Steve Ellery, Trevor Ashby and Steve Reed.
Out of position 19, Mike Conway and Gavin Monahan, the former Formula Ford racer. Bruce Williams and Paul Gover join up in the Sumoco Commodore.
Row 11, it's John Cotter and Peter Doolman, Kevin Waldock and John Smith out of position 22.
Heading back towards the grid now, row 12, Melinda Price and Karen Brewer, the Castrol Cougars in the Commodore. Malcolm Steniken and Norris Miles out of position 24.
So there they are, just warming up. Glenn Seaton, the newly crowned Shell Australian Touring Car Champion. He lost the race here last year by a mere 1.5 seconds. Barry Sheen, he'd love to be on number 1 again today.
Well, having a bit of problem with Barry's mic there. We'll get back to Barry in a second. Meanwhile, field gridding up behind the pace car. Very wet, slippery conditions, as you've seen in those preliminary races earlier on in the telecast. Some of the portions of the track have been resurfaced, particularly coming up here toward brakes, under brakes I should say, for Shell Corner. New bitumen laid down, a little bit of oil coming out of the bitumen compound. It's making the track very, very slippery, so we're looking at a start behind the pace car.
The conditions just atrocious. We go on board. There is John Bow. So that answers the question of who is starting in the number 17 Shell Helix Falcon. John teamed up with long-time partner Dick Johnson. Looking forward to a great race. They've won here at Sandown in the endurance race, the 500 2 times, 94 and 95, back-to-back. You're keen to get number 3 today, Mark.
Indeed, we understand from race control. This is the official first lap of the race. Just waiting for confirmation on that, but this is a quite unusual thing. Australian spectators may not be used to this, but they do it quite often in Europe. When conditions are treacherous enough, they don't want a whole standing start in a field of 25 cars piling into that first corner under slippery, wet conditions. They start them off under the pace car. 1, maybe 2 laps to get the field very used to the conditions. The pace car will pull off and the race will be underway.
The Mitre 10 Falcon, Mark Larkham, he's extremely excited to be starting off the front row of the grid.
Well, it's about time. You've got a bit of good luck when you think about it. You know, it's really the sensible thing to do to start this race behind the security car, safety car, because the way conditions are, you can imagine if they did a standing start, everybody would be all over the circuit, and more especially going into the first corner, you'd have 24 or 25 cars going in there and about 6 coming out.
Exactly. And as we've seen in some of the support races, it was just absolute mayhem when they hit Shell Corner.
Yeah, it has been pretty difficult, but the V8 supercar teams have all had a chance to see those support races. They know how slippery it is out there. Good call on the safety car.
I think this morning in practice, Greg Murphy said he went into the first corner and it was just as if the steering had broke. You know, he turned in and it just straight understeered directly off the circuit. He was the first one off and there was about 9 cars went off on the first corner.
Likewise, Neil Crompton, just talking with Neil earlier, and he said it's just you turn the wheel and nothing happens. You just keep going straight ahead. Very slippery and slick conditions. On board with John Faulkner in the Better Electrical Fisher and Paykel entry. He's had a sensational Shell Australian Touring Car Championship this year. Of course, top privateer. Now he gets into the Enduros. What can we expect from the Melbourne-based driver?
Well, it is hard to get used to, folks, but one lap, the first lap of the Tickford 500 has been completed. This is a race, but they're just sitting in behind the safety car. They're now starting their second lap of the race. Very, very slowly, finding their way around, but we'll wait to get the word from the clerk of the course to say that the drivers have checked out the race conditions. They are safe to start the race. Drivers weaving backwards and forwards, trying to get as much temperature into the tyres as they can.
Barry brings back memories of the Hungarian Formula One Grand Prix just a few weeks ago.
They come up toward Holden Hill, the back straight. Cars reaching 250 kilometres an hour in the dry conditions. Kalari on the helmet there tells you that's Mark Noske. The lights have come off on the safety car. No. So we're going to go back to racing, full speed racing, by the time the safety car comes around past the pits this time around. So the crowd getting all pumped. They're ready for some action here. Mark Larkham, his best starting position in V8 Supercar, and boy, what a time to do it. Tickford 500.
It's going to be interesting, the first corner, because don't forget the guy's been around her a couple of times now, but it's one thing going around behind a safety car, it's another thing coming down the straight at sort of 230, 240 kilometres an hour, and then getting on the brakes and trying to turn into the first corner. So have a good look on the first left-hander.
So lights are off on the safety car. That should peel off into the pit entry lane now, as he brings them on to Peter Brock straight. So there he goes off, and now we're going to come up to racing. Cars should hold formation. See them squirming under power. There should not be any passing until they cross the start-finish line to complete 2 laps and head out on their 3rd lap of the Tickford 500. Away they go. Peter Brock will lead the field. How appropriate that, his last appearance at Sandown.
First time into Shell Corner under full race conditions in terms of not going behind the safety car. There's already a challenge for 3rd spot. Alan Jones moves through on the inside of Glenn Seaton to take over that number 3 spot. They all sort themselves out on under very, very treacherous conditions. I'm sure we're going to see plenty of action. And Larkham has already moved up onto the back of Peter Brock.
So Brock brings them onto the back straight the first time around. Big string of cars. Larkham, Seaton, Jones, Noske. In the Young Lions, Commodore, Murphy, Faulkner, Gardner, Johnson, Longhurst. Rounds out the top 10. Lights, punching holes through the spray. Still pretty difficult conditions in terms of visibility. There's Alan Jones. Glenn Seaton settling in there in the second. The mobile Holden Racing Team Commodores.
Yeah, Jones is putting away from Seaton pretty quickly. Look at the gap he's pulled in just, what, 3/4 of a lap.
Going very well. It'll be interesting to see a driver change around about lap 50 or so, with Jason Bright getting into the car, because when Jason had his very first V8 Supercar race at Symonds Plains in Tasmania this year, he filled in the Gary Rogers team for Stephen Richards. He drove there in wet conditions, Mark, and if you remember, he drove just brilliantly.
Certainly did. Impressed a lot of people. On Shell Helix camera.
Yeah, it's a heavy position for Jason to be in, because you can imagine if AJ's in a really good position and Jason goes out and does anything that he shouldn't do, you'd hate to bring him back in, wouldn't you?
That was the decision of the Shell team. It was between John Bowe and Dick Johnson. I believe it was dry conditions. Dick was going to start. If it was wet, it was John Bowe's turn. So John drew the short straw on that one. But he's doing a terrific job just sitting in there in the completely re-engineered Shell 17 Falcon. Car rebuilt. It was actually the number 18 car that hit the wall at the AGP meeting earlier in the year, but they've done a number of different re-engineering tweaks in the car. Particularly, you see where John Bowe's seating position is very rearward. He's almost got his head alongside the B-pillar of the car. Right. So, they've done a little bit of re-engineering on the car, and it's going pretty well.
Right behind this, have a look. It's the Castrol Ford of Tony Longhurst. These two guys, Longhurst and O'Brien, have just been dynamite in the wet. They were the quickest in the session. We go back on board the Shell Helix in-car camera with Bowe. Look up the inside. No, Longhurst brings it back inside. He is on fire at the moment.
Yeah, it's a 500-kilometre race. Wow. Slippery tracks. Tony Longhurst really, really pushing hard. So John Bowe,
up the inside.
I think John Bowe actually gave a bit of racing room there. He doesn't want to get involved in that sort of cut and thrust this early in the race. 500 kilometres, it's a very long grind around here. Tony Longhurst was really on the charge. Well, there you go, Tony. You'll go for a charge on your own, according to John Bowe. So the Castrol Ford running very strongly. Peter Brock still in first position. Mark Larkin hang on in second. Jones in third. Seaton fourth. Murphy, Gardner. This battle. Now Longhurst moves up to 7th. Bowe back to 8th. Noske 9th. And Larry Perkins moves up to the top 10.
Talking about Longhurst's teammate in Charlie O'Brien. He hasn't been in a V8 Supercar for quite some time, but over the last couple of months he's been putting in some pretty hard training at the Lakeside track in Queensland. He's probably done about 50 laps in Longhurst's car. We have a look here. It's Murphy making an inside move on Seaton. Seaton doesn't argue at all. He says, just make your way through there, Greg. I won't fight that one.
That's the thing, the mentality in a race like this, whereas normally if we were looking at the Shell Australian Touring Car round, somebody try and close the door. There's a totally different mentality in an endurance race. You think, oh, I don't want to let him up the inside, but you've got everything to lose and nothing to gain.
Go on board.
At the end of the day, you know, they're just going to say you're stupid.
Windscreens O'Brien on board camera. You're riding with Glenn Seaton in 4th position. Alan Jones up ahead in the spray. Glenn was having a bit of trouble getting the setup right on the car, which is quite unusual. Normally the car is beautifully balanced with good handler. We're just having a bit of trouble dialing the car in, particularly riding over the bumps here at Sandown. But he said the car has been getting better. And now we've got wet conditions. That's another variable for the Ford Credit team to cope with. The car looking pretty strong in these opening laps.
Talking with Tony Murphy, team manager of the Ford Credit team yesterday, and asked him just how much different the car is from...
Oh, Jonesy!
Now he's picked up a whole heap of grass there on his air intake. Hopefully that'll fall away. Yeah, most of that's fallen away, so it hasn't gone into the intake, which can all cause all sorts of dramas. But Jones managed to get on the track. It doesn't look like the undertray is damaged.
Where's Larkin?
Well, keeping an eye at Larkin.
2 Mobile HRT cars there, weren't they?
Yeah.
One after another.
Larkin is in big trouble. We're watching. He slipped down the order. He hasn't come across the start-finish line yet. He has.
I think I caught a glimpse of when we saw AJ just in the top right-hand corner. I'm sure I saw Mark Larkin's car.
Holden Racing Team 1-2. Just see Alan Jones sneak up the inside of Wayne Gardner. Check it out on our Shell Helix race score. That's the leaderboard. Peter Brock in 05. He's built up a 7.8, almost 8-second lead over his teammate, Greg Murphy. Glenn Seaton in 3rd position. Gardner was in 4th. Jones has just taken that position, but Gardner now back on the attack in the Coke Commodore. Longhurst and O'Brien in 6th. Bow back there in 7th. Perkins in 8th. So a great battle here. Alan Jones on the attack. Just went right across the grass. Managed to get back in. Doesn't look like it's affected his speed at all.
Let's have a look at that on a replay, that earlier incident with Alan Jones. There they are, the teammates. They just both go off onto the grass. Larkham is spinning around. Jones has been able to continue straight on, and, well, it looks like that Larkham has parked it there because he certainly didn't come across the line. It didn't trigger on our computer screen, and he would be desperately disappointed with that.
It's funny, you see the 2 cars in... I saw a glimpse of Larkham, and I thought, no, it can't be. You know, it's... oh, that's sad.
Well, Larkham's just tripped the timing beam there. He's come across in 15th position, so he is back on the circuit. But boy, oh boy, that guy's had some wretched luck this year. Fancy being involved in an incident with your teammate. Look at Tony Longhurst on the attack. Under brakes, he really is charging in the Castrol Ford. Sneaks up the inside of Wayne Gardner in the Coca-Cola Commodore.
Longhurst on the attack nice and early. We've seen him just creeping up through the field. He qualified 10th. He is now up into 4th position.
Oh! I seem to remember it coming together there with Gardner in the earlier Sandown.
Yeah, and the Shell Australian Touring Car round, he and Murphy came together there, and Gardner spun off. There you have it. It's Murphy, then Seaton.
Oh,
Brock's in.
Rocky.
0-5. Now, I've got to say, all through practice, this car has been haunted by some sort of electrical gremlin in the car's engine management system. Jeff Gretsch had his fingers crossed all the way through practice that they'd be able to find the problem. Let's go down to John Smales.
I'm with Jeff Gretsch right now. We're pushing Peter Brock away and out of the race. Jeff, what's wrong?
We've got something wrong with the throttle cable. We don't know yet until we get to have a look at it.
Is it possible to get it back in the race?
Oh, well, we'll try to, but until we get off and see what's wrong with it, we won't know.
Well, that is just so disappointing for Peter Brock and Mark Scaife. This was, well, Peter was looking at win number 10, and it's certainly not going to happen now. Well, we won't dismiss it straight away, but it's very unlikely that it's about to happen.
When you think of all the modern technology, telemetry, etc., microchip this and that, and then a throttle cable, look at Longhurst!
He's on the attack again, up the inside of Jones, and he gets up the inside of Seaton! And the double whammy, he toes Jones through in the Komatsu Ford.
So Tony Longhurst is up into 2nd position from 10th. We're only on lap 7. From 10th up into 2nd position. He's out chasing after Greg Murphy in the mobile Holden Commodore. Alan Jones is staying nice and close to him. The Fords are doing very well here at Sandown.
Absolutely.
AJ's definitely got the race pace on today. There's no doubt whatsoever about that.
Tony Longhurst Longhurst is just on fire. His teammate Charlie O'Brien has been doing comparable times. He's been pretty much level pegging Tony with the time. So this team, the Castrol Ford team, are looking nice and strong.
Well, they're losing up to second position. That dynamite move on Glenn Seaton. And Greg Murphy in car 15 up ahead of him.
Oh, look up.
Yep. This shows how wet those conditions are. As soon as the weight gets off that inside tyre, it locks up very, very easily. It's a real great battle here.
Going backwards here.
He really is. He's slipping back through the field. Just looking at his time, 1:26.5. Longhurst, the fastest man on the track at the moment, at 1:24.8. So the Castrol Ford, as Longhurst promised throughout the very disappointing Shell Series, by the time we get to the endurance races, keep an eye on us.
Tell you what, also keep an eye on Stephen Richards. You can see him there right behind Glenn Seaton. He qualified in 13th position and is already up into 9th. So Stephen Richards teamed up with his father Jim for the Tickford 500 this year. They're going very well. They're inside the top 10. So there's been some quite big movers forward. Perkins, you can see there, just coming round Shell Corner now behind John Bow in the 17th Shell Helix Falcon. He's worked his way up from 11th up into 6th position. Here goes Bow having a look on the inside of Gardner.
Feels like Wayne almost let him through there. We're getting involved in this cut and thrust with the team manager on the headset saying, now, cool it, Wayne. We've got a long, long way to go yet, buddy. So it's Murphy in charge, last year's winner.
Let's have a look at the Shell Helix race score. It is Murphy and Lowndes who lead the way. Longhurst and O'Brien, they are really charging on. The combination of Jones and Bright. Gardner, Crompton sitting in 4th position, Johnson and Bow. Let's have a look back, 6 through 10. It's Perkins. Then we go back to Johnson, Seaton, Stephen Richards and Barguana. More on Network 10 after this. Welcome back to the Tickford 500 of 1997. More than 160 laps in store, but after only a fraction of that, we've had incredible action. Murphy in the HRT Commodore has charged from 6th on the grid to lead the race. Longhurst has come from 10th on the grid to be 2nd, and Peter Brock, the man of the moment, the man who's been revered here today, is in big, big trouble. The Coca-Cola Commodore of Wayne Gardner is sitting in 5th position at the moment. There he is, the chief behind the wheel. He had some problems earlier on. Larry Perkins is looking for a way past. He ducked out behind. Thought he might have gone for the inside move there. And then sitting right behind, it is Johnson Jr. Stephen is forcing the issue with Larry Perkins.
You can see the guys are starting to get a little bit more aggressive now. They can afford to. It looks like the rain stopped and there's a very slightest hint of a dry line emerging. That's being reflected in the lap times too. They brought it down. They're now running in the 1 minute 23 second bracket. Murphy just on a 1:23.7. Stephen Richards very, very quick too. He's back in 8th. So the track is starting to dry out a little bit. Look at this attack on the inside by Perkins. Not quite enough real estate there. Ducks back in behind Gardner so he gets on that drying line. But you can see the track starting to dry out. These drivers will be hoping that the weather continues to hold. John Smales.
You can't believe the disappointment and disbelief that exists in the 05 pit at the moment. Brock is in the car. He won't get out. He's got the belts on. The team is working around the car trying to fix it. Mark Scaife, what's happened?
Well, look, we think it's done a throttle cable or the mechanism at the end of the cable, but it's a silly thing. I mean, these races are like that, and you've got to have a little bit of luck on your side, John.
But you've got a smile on your face. You're not feeling it, mate.
Oh, well, I mean, what can you do? This is the game we play, and in the end, we'll get back out there and press on, see what happens.
There's a great battle going on between 3 cars. It is Larry Perkins has finally worked his way past Wayne Gardner. He's got Stephen Johnson in. And speaking of the Stephen Richards is coming storming up behind Johnson. Now Johnson looks for an inside run on Gardner. Young Stephen Johnson has teamed up with Kiwi Craig Bedd, and they've been getting faster and faster all weekend.
Yeah, it's a terrific scrap. We just saw that when we cut to that interview with Mark Scaife. Perkins muscling through on the inside of Gardner. Now he's coming under attack from Junior Johnson. And Stephen Richards in the Valvoline Cummins Commodore. We saw this car was very, very quick in the opening laps of Bathurst last year until they came unglued in those very wet conditions and put the car into the wall. But there's no doubt about its speed. And it's a very strong, small, very tightly knit team under Mike Exel.
I tell you what's going to be interesting is when the track starts to dry out. As you can see, it's getting a bit of a...
Oh, Larry Perkins!
Dear me. Shows even with a wealth of experience you can still do it. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when the track starts to dry out. The car of Longhurst and Gardner on Yokohama tyres. And traditionally, look at see all the, when you go off in the dirt like that, it fills up the front air dam. As soon as you get on the brakes, they all come out. It all comes out again. Gardner.
Big attack here from Stephen Johnson. He got a great run coming out of that corner onto Brock Straight. They'll go virtually side by side under brakes into Shell Corner. Johnson is better, but Wayne Gardner gets a little wiggle on under brakes, just kisses the front panel of the Shell Helix forward, but managed to survive unscathed. That's cost him time coming out of the corner. Now Stephen Richards tries to take advantage of the Valvoline Cummins Commodore to see if he can muscle his way too. Gardner getting attacked from both directions.
Well, just seeing there what Stephen Johnson was made of. Gardner just testing the young guy out a little bit. Stephen Johnson held his own quite nicely. He moves through now, one position better. He's up into fourth. It looks like this. It's Murphy. Longhurst still in second. Here comes Stevie Richards in the Valvoline Cummins Commodore right up the outside of Wayne Gardner.
Look at that side by side as they crest the rise. Still well over 200 kilometres an hour in these wet conditions. Richards up the inside, sticks it back to fifth gear, and I think he's just got inside Wayne Gardner. Larry Perkins now with all that work to do to get past our 1987 World 500cc champ Gardner. So the order now, Murphy, Longhurst, Jones, Richards goes a little bit wide, gets right out on the ripple strips from the outside of the corner. That cost him time. Gardner comes back on the attack. So tremendous scrap here between Gardner and Richards.
Gardner has a look up the inside, couldn't quite do it there. Pulls back in behind Stephen Richards. This is so encouraging for the Richards team. They started 13th position, and Stephen is now up there, well up there inside. He's up into 6th position now, doing very well. I had dreadful luck last year here at the Tickford 500. Perhaps this could be Stephen and Jimmy's year.
Blasting through the spray. Former Australian Formula 4 champion Stephen Richards continued the tradition of his father in driving just about anything you can put a steering wheel on. They really are lovers of any form of motorsport, the Richards clan. And Stephen doing a great job here. Look at Larry now, back on the attack, trying to sneak up the inside of Wayne Gardner. Meanwhile, here's our race leader, car 15, the last remaining Holden Racing Team Commodore. And we're watching the gap between him and second position. 3.7 seconds. It's come under 4 seconds now between Murphy and Longhurst. The Castrol Ford really charging, and he's got Alan Jones right behind him.
Starting to weave their way through. There's the Dolman Potter entry there. This is the Ford Credit Team. Glenn Seaton.
Well, looks like he's in drama with air in the brakes. That may have been why it was costing him so much time in the opening laps. But they're trying to bleed some sort of air out of the system. Seaton pumping the pedal. Windscreens O'Brien onboard camera tells you what's going on. You hear the crew saying up, down on the pedal. They're trying to pump some sort of air out of the hydraulic system. And it just goes to show how things can fall apart in these critical races.
Here's Longhurst weaving his way through, and Alan Jones is right on Longhurst's tail. They're weaving their way past Peter Dillman now. Alan Jones is right on. This is a terrific battle between the two Fords. The Castrol Ford of Longhurst, the Komatsu Falcon of Alan Jones. This is the battle for second and third. They come into Shell Corner. Longhurst, he's had 3 fourth positions, placed fourth the last 3 years in a row. He's looking for a top 3, and he's looking for a win this time round, and geez, going well.
Vintage Alan Jones, isn't it? The guy turns 50 this year, but age shall not weary them. He's just as fast, just as aggressive as he's always been. Has been a happy man this year. Not getting the team. Oh! Looks like the Dillman just gets a... Well, no, it's Dillman, it's the Steniken car. Dillman up behind him. But look at this attack from Alan Jones. He's sitting right under the wing of Longhurst Castrol Ford. 230 kilometres an hour, just about slices a skin of paint off his back bumper. Jones on the outside, Longhurst on the inside. Tremendous stuff.
The battle of the Gold Coasters, the battle of the Queenslanders. They're fighting it out. Longhurst is doing really well.
Keep in mind, these two were teammates with the BMW team. We've heard word from the pits. Glenn Seaton has rejoined the race, but he'll be way down. Check out how they sit on this Shell Helix race score. Tremendous opening lap for the Tickford 500. Murphy at the wheel continues to lead 3.4 seconds. That gap coming down to this battle. Second and third, Longhurst and Jones. And John Bow in fourth position. Then it's Steve Johnson, the second Shell Ford. Perkins, Gardner at Crompton in seventh, and Stephen Richards in eighth.
Starting to creep up ever so slightly back there in that fourth position. John Bow doing very well. He's starting to realize. So we've got 3 Fords in a row there. We've got 4 Fords because we then go back to Johnson Jr., Stephen Johnson, who's doing a terrific job. Now look at Jones. He's all over the place behind Longhurst. He's got the inside run and he gets there. Alan Jones moves through on the inside of Tony Longhurst. This is the view from the Whitman's Chocolate Lightship as they work their way around onto the back straight. Let's see how they go in terms of straight line speed. Jones has been drafting Longhurst for the last couple of laps. Jones now moves up into second position.
Well, judging by the lap times, the track's not growing out that much as fast as it was going. Murphy's still leading this race. 4 seconds in front of these guys. He's still operating the 123s. These guys in the 124s. So Murphy, the only man now in the 1 minute 23 second bracket. So track conditions staying static, it appears. And we'll have to keep an eye on that because as soon as these drying line starts to emerge, they're going to be in trouble on these wet weather tyres.
XRA
Sorry, if you look at Jonesy, he looks like he's looking for the wet part of the circuit. You know, he keeps diving off to where it's really wet, so he's being the wise guy and trying to look after his tyres.
Let's have a look at that. He's still in the Shell Helix race score. You're watching the Tickford 500. Greg Murphy in the Holden Racing Team Commodore leads Tony Longhurst. Alan Jones in third position. John Bow in the Shell Helix Ford in fourth. And Stephen Johnson in fifth. 6 through to 10. Perkins and Ingle hanging in there. Gardner in seventh. Stephen Richards in eighth. Bargwanner in ninth and Faulkner in 10th. We'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome back. 10's exclusive coverage of the Tickford 500 from Sandown. You're watching car 97, driven by Mark Noske, one of the two young lions from the HRT, and Jason Bargwanner, his partner, will get in the car very soon. But the leader is their teammate, Greg Murphy, from Alan Jones and Tony Longhurst. So it's Holden, Falcon, Falcon.
We just got some great pictures there from the Holden in-car camera of Mark Noske hard at work. This is his second appearance at the Tickford 500. He shared the Gibson Motorsport Commodore last year with both Scape and Walden, and they had their fair share of problems. But so this is his first fair income shot, his first real go at the Tickford 500, and he's doing very, very well. He's ahead of John Faulkner at the moment, sitting in 9th position in the Holden Young Lions entry.
Yeah, the fastest car on the circuit at the moment is AJ's. AJ has definitely got the eyes on.
Yeah, the track continuing to dry. Now Alan Jones down to the 22s, a 1:22.72. Fastest man on the circuit at the moment, as Barry said. Murphy a 1:23.7. So Jones really on the charge. He's done another 22.8, so he's really got a great setup on that Komatsu Ford.
Mark in that shot there, right behind John Faulkner is Thomas Mazira in the Bottle Magic entry. Now they started, he and his teammate John Trimble started 16th, and Mazira is already up into 11th. There it is there, the red and black car. So he is storming up behind John Faulkner. That should be a great battle. Thomas, of course, for the last 3 years shared the ride with Peter Brock. He's now teamed up with John Trimble in that Bottle Magic entry. There he is, flying down the newly named Peter Brock Main Straight.
And further behind these guys, Mark Larkham starting to come back through the field after that disaster. There he is in the Mitre 10 Ford. Went off earlier with teammate Alan Jones for a wild ride across the grass. He's back in 13th position. This is on a 1:24.1, so a little bit off his teammate's pace at the moment, but trying to claw his way back through the field.
Car 49 there, the Alcare Commodore. That is Peter Fitzgerald, GT production car ace. Many times, or multiple times, production car champion. He currently leads this year's GTP Championship. He's giving him a hard time. Meanwhile, look at this for the lead. Alan Jones and the Komatsu Pertec Falcon is right on Greg Murphy.
Well, we're looking at that gap. It was down to 2 seconds, so we weren't quite sure it'd be that close, but in that lap he has really caught him hand over fist. Look at Jonesy heading out now.
The wet.
Yeah, he's heading out onto the wet part of the track, so he's starting to suffer a little bit. This track getting drier and drier. He's on a full wet tyre. Murphy, meanwhile, stays on the dry racing line.
Maybe he's not suffering, Mark. Maybe he's just doing the sensible thing and thinking, hang on a minute, let's look after these little babies and keep them nice.
Could well be,
Doesn't look like he's suffering.
He's taking up the inside.
Gotcha.
And he's trying to squeeze through. Murphy just gives him a little racing room, so Alan Jones goes through to lead the Tickford 500. There's the Windscreens O'Brien driver profile for the man who was just leading the race, Greg Murphy.
So Alan Jones now takes hold of this on lap 22 of 161, the 1997 Tickford 500. Jones, things are looking good for him at the right end of the season. He was at one stage placed third in the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship, and he was the real Mr. Consistency in the early stages, but a few hassles, and he sort of dropped out of contention as the season went on, but things are looking pretty good at the moment for AJ.
Yeah, he's getting some tremendous speed out of this car. Shades of Bathurst 1996 when he took the fight really up to the Holden Racing Team. He was leading them a merry dance until the car had a split fuel line and tragically caught fire, and certainly showing that speed here in the Tickford 500. Here's Glenn Seaton back on track in the Ford Credit Falcon. Let's go to John Smales.
Yes, Seaton, in fact, lost 1 minute and 8 seconds in the pits with his brake problems. David Parsons, what was the drama?
Well, I think it was just a loss of brakes or what have you, whether it's master cylinder problem or it could have been air, but we've let him, and he's out there again now and seems to be fine. So
He was telling you it was pedal right to the metal with the brake pedal?
yeah, it was right down. So he just had to come in and get organised and help his gone, but it's fine now, so we don't really know what it was.
In conditions like this, what does losing your brakes do to a driver's confidence?
It shatters him.
Not to say what it does to your driving, Steve.
Well, that's a hassle that Glenn Seaton and David Parsons really didn't need, as we have a look at the Windscreens O'Brien in-car camera at Glenn hard at work. He's back in 19th. Meanwhile, John Bow has got himself up into the top 3. He's ahead of Tony Longhurst now. And look at Stephen Johnson. Junior Johnson is coming right up into it. The Shell Helix Falcons Dunlop shod cars. The Dunlop tyres are proving to be very effective in these wet conditions.
Yeah, well, conditions changing all the time. The times have slipped up to the 24, 23-second bracket, so there's little sort of sprinkles of rain. Guys get a little bit faster, they get a little bit slower. There's also traffic that they're contending with too. So these conditions, oh, look at the inside wheel, just stop there. He brakes hard for XR8 Falcon corner. So John Bow, Tony Longhurst. So a tremendous battle. These opening laps are still early days yet. Lap 23 of a 161 lap contest. Let's have a listen.
Lock her up, get her down and turn her in. It's so, the art of driving in the rain just be so smooth.
Well, fantastic there from the Shell Helix in-car camera at the rear of the car and also inside the cockpit with John Bow. He is really going well at the moment. Likewise is his Shell Helix young teammate, and something's happened to Longhurst. He's pulled over to the side of the track. He's just dropped off the pace big time because Johnson has gone through Stephen, that is, and so too, by the looks of it, did Larry Perkins.
Well, he may have had a drama getting onto the back straight that time. Very critical to get out of that NGK corner quickly, so you carry that speed all the way up the straight. You can see Longhurst just rubbing his eyes there. So he looks pretty cool and relaxed in the car. He maybe just made a mistake coming onto the back straight. Have to keep an eye on that. Certainly been on fire in these opening laps.
Well, after such a great start, we'd hate to see anything happen. Does he pull into the pits? No, he doesn't. He just continues on. So your theory could be right there, Mark. Maybe just had a little bit of a slip and slide going onto the back straight, taking a very inside line going down the main straight. I'll tell you what, the big surprise at the moment, not really the surprise, but the pleasing thing to see is Stephen Johnson, young Stephen, going so well.
Yeah, well, he is one of Australia's great young talents. And with Dick Johnson as his father, certainly put a very experienced old head on young shoulders. Stephen's tremendous, only in his early 20s, still got a long, long racing career ahead of him. Anytime he gets a chance to get behind the wheel of one of these beautiful Shell Helix Falcons, he really does get the hammer down. He's proving it here. Tremendous result for Steve so far. Let's hope he can carry it across the line.
Well, he had a dreadful start to the year. He was racing Trans Am. There's the 05 Commodore back on the track, so that's great to see. Peter Brock is back on the circuit. He is ahead of Wayne Gardner, but of course would have lost around about 10 laps. I believe he's 10 laps down on the lead car, so a lot of work to do there, but great to see Peter Brock and the mobile Holden Commodore back out on the Sandown circuit.
It's just amazing when you've got a high-tech car, something like $300,000 worth of machinery there, and something as simple as a little throttle clip can put you out of a big race like this.
Well, it can, and looking now at the gap between Jonesy and Greg Murphy, he's got just over 2-second gap, and he's lapping, nearly a second quicker. So Jonesy's doing something right.
I think you're right about your theory on the tyres, Baz. He's certainly not costing him any time. I think he's just conscious of how long he's got before his first pit stop, and wants to preserve the tyres, keep the temperatures down, and make sure those block patterns don't start breaking up. John Smales.
Yes, indeed, Mark. The problem with Tony Longhurst is quite severe. What happened was that on the warm-up lap, he was the only one of the drivers to call in and say that his broad wet weather tyres here, these broad pattern tyres, weren't working well enough. So he went to these tyres instead. As you can see, a much smaller block pattern. The problem is they don't last as long. So in these drying conditions, Tony Longhurst has had real problems trying to keep his rubber on the road.
Brock's gone off and he's taken a whole heap of mud with him in that front spoiler. He's back on the circuit and everything appears to be okay, so just getting back on and getting it all together. We go inside the cockpit with Peter Brock talking to his team. Holden, pictures courtesy of HSV, the in-car camera. He's just checking to make sure everything's right, getting it all together, just having a look around the car. getting back on track.
It ceases to amaze me the way a team's fortunes can turn around like that. This car has been absolutely dynamite throughout untimed practice, throughout official qualifying. It's been the fastest thing on the planet, and it's just amazing how something like that can bring it all undone.
Yeah, that's why sometimes all through practice, all through qualifying, it's great to have a disaster, and then you get in a long race like this, and all of a sudden it comes right. So look at Tony Longhurst's season inside there, and now it appears to be coming right.
Well, John Smale said in that pit report that there really is a tyre battle going on here. It just depends on which brand you've got. There's Craig Lowndes last year's winner with Greg Murphy, watching his teammate still running in second position behind Alan Jones, some 3 seconds behind the Komatsu Ford. Let's look at that on the Shell Helix race score. Jones almost 3 seconds up on Murphy. John Bowe in third position with Stephen Johnson in fourth.
Just what an amazing day for Peter Brock. We'll have a look at the replay of that earlier incident with Peter Brock when he just slid off. It was his first lap back out, and you can see just going off and the back wheel dropping off.
Looks like he got in a little bit deep and off there. You see the dry line there. Oh my God, no. Yeah, it looks. You see the dry line there. What you do if you go rushing a bit quickly, it's Scafie having a look. And if you're going a bit deep, just get off the dry line. That's the end of the story. You just understand.
Well, it'll be a big disappointment for Mark Scaife. Virtually 18 months out of the scene in a really properly funded competitive car. He's got his chance with the factory team, and he's absolutely blitzed them all weekend. And a real disappointment. But they've got the Primus 1000 ahead, and that's when they can make amends.
There's the second place car, 15, the Mobile HRT car of Greg Murphy. He's got the Lansvale Smash Repairs car behind. Steve Reed and Trevor Ashby. Trevor Ashby at the wheel, doing the first stint. This is the guy's third Sandown 500. Tickford 500 the last couple of years. Trevor Ashby doing a good job.
I think you'll find when Brocky changes over and Scafie gets in the car, when you get a situation like this, Scafie's been so looking forward to this race, and you know, his pole position is obviously flying, and I think you'll find that Scafie will blitz him when he gets in it.
Yeah, well, it's a good. This is. They always talk about the Sandown 500 being a great warm-up exercise for Bathurst, and he's sorted out these little dramas and make sure they don't happen.
Well, look at that line, those distinct dry line there. So we have some terrific pictures of the Lansvale Smash Repairs car.
Well, it is a dry-ing line, but there's enough mist and drizzle around to keep the lap times about the 1:23-second bracket. They dropped into the 22s a few laps ago, but now the times are slipping up again, so conditions constantly changing.
Well, have a look at this here. We have 17 and 18, the two Shell Helix Falcons. They're right on each other. Stephen Johnson staying with it, and looming in the background is Larry Perkins. He's doing very well. Well, things are fantastic here at Sandown International Raceway, the 97 Tickford 500. It's been a great race so far, and lots to come here on your home of motorsport. More after this. Welcome back to the Tickford 500 on Network 10, and what an amazing race it has been after 30 laps. As the back markers are lapped by the, theoretically, Johnson & Johnson Shell Helix Falcons, but in the Dick Johnson Falcon at the moment is John Bowe. We'll go through the placings. A terrific battle there, that three-way battle. It's still Jones out in front ahead of Murphy. Then we get to this particular battle here right on screen. It's John Bowe, Stephen Johnson, and then Larry Perkins sitting in fifth position. The Shell Helix on-car camera, we can say. This is the view from the rear of John Bowe's Shell Helix Falcon. You can see Larry Perkins having a look up the inside of Stephen Johnson, and he's got him. So Larry forces his way through. A good hard move, very tight move there. Perkins is now up one position better.
That's just an indication of, as I said, the cool head of Steve Johnson. He didn't want to get caught up in that little fracas. Just let Perkins sneak around the outside, sit in behind. It's a long, long, long way to go. Pit stops and all sorts of drama lay ahead of them. He wants to keep that car nice and clean without a scratch on it. Alan Jones, meanwhile, still the fastest man on the track, 1:23.63. And Wayne Gardner, too, is getting some more speed out of the Coca-Cola car. He's second fastest at 1:23.7. He sits back in 8.
Well, Larry's had quite an impressive record here at Sandown in terms of the endurance race here. Tickford 500 today. He's been twice winner of it. One in 84, teamed up with Brock and with Steve Harrington in 92. And he's been a very consistent finisher. Of course, a lot of retirements in the endurance races, but Larry's had a very good track record. And today, the Tickford 500, it's Larry's 16th appearance. The Sandown endurance race.
Well, he really has been on a charge after qualifying outside of the top 10. Dunlop team went for a pretty hard Dunlop slick, but now they've gone into wet weather tyres. The Dunlop seems to work pretty well, particularly in these sort of conditions where the track is just starting to dry out. The Dunlop wet, whichever way you cut it up, seems to work particularly well, and Perkins is taking advantage of that now, up in 4th position as he closes right in on John Bow, the Shell 17 Falcon.
Well, Mark, yesterday after the top 10 shootout, I went had a bit of a talk with Russell Engel, and of course they were outside of the top 10. They were back in 11th position, so they actually watched the top 10 shootout from the sideline. And I said, what's happening, mate? What's the story? And he said, oh, well, we're just still sorting things out, but we've gone for a harder tyre compound. And he said, we're not really that worried starting from 11th position. He said, with a full tank of fuel in these tyres on, we can still run sort of at a very competitive time. He was talking about a little over 1:12 lap time then, and he said, we're not too worried because we know we can do that time all day with an empty tank of fuel, with a full tank of fuel. He said, it doesn't matter, we're there.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Larian knows how to win endurance races. Teamed up with Russell at Bathurst in 1995 to win that exciting race when they drove from last to first. And he certainly knows how to prepare a bulletproof car too. Look at Perkins on the attack, right up behind the wing of the Shell 17 Ford. John Bow really feeling the pressure from the Castrol Commodore driver. The Order Jones, he's 4.4 seconds ahead of Murphy in 2nd position. And this great battle for 3rd between John Bow and Larry Perkins, with Stephen Johnson sitting back there in 5th position.
Well, one interested person, a very interested person in that Shell Helix Falcon number 17 is Murray Bunn, the engineer who's been working on that revised car, as the Shell team are calling it. We have a look at Peter Fitzgerald in the Alcare Commodore at the moment. He is going very, very well. He's up into the top 10. He's in fact sitting in 9th position. He's got himself ahead of John Faulkner and then also ahead of the Holden Young Lions car. They've slipped back to 11th, Mark Noske, but it's Fitzy, Peter Fitzgerald behind the wheel at the moment. Teamed up, it says Crick on the window, but Greg Crick was unable to make it here today. It's in fact Terry Finnegan who is driving with Peter Fitzgerald.
So Peter Fitzgerald, John Faulkner behind him in 10th position. And we go back to 11th, the Young Lions Commodore, driven by Mark Noske. So this is the battle just at the tail end of the top 10. Peter Fitzgerald, John Faulkner, the top place privateer this year on the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship, and Noske in the Young Lions Commodore. We go on board with John Faulkner riding in the passenger seat. He's got the drink straw. You can see the drink container just behind his seat there holds 2 or 3 litres of fluid. They're going to lose working away inside this car. Apologise for the breakup on that picture, but pretty bad weather conditions here.
The Wins Commodore, the combination of Darren Hossack and Stephen Ellery. As we have a look at this battle going on here, we switch quickly because Larry Perkins is all over John Bow, really applying the pressure.
Going to pick their way past Gavin Monaghan in Mike Conway's Falcon. Another of the many privateers running here. Conway looked like he might be giving him racing room. Anyway, we cut to the rear bumper of the Shell 17 Ford. You're sitting in the slipstream as Larry Perkins tries to find a way past the 17 Ford. It's a drag race up Brock Straight. Hard under brake, Shell Helix takes you aboard. It is tremendous battle. It's been going on lap after lap, and no one wants to give an inch.
Well, certainly Larry's not going to give in. Just getting back to what we were talking about earlier with the 17 Falcon, Murray Bunn, New Zealand engineer, has been working extensively with Dick Johnson Racing. And this is the car that, in fact, John Bow crashed at the Indy Carnival on the Gold Coast. And we're having a bit of a joke yesterday, saying we should call it the Evolution car because it's going to go through several stages. They're working very hard to overcome the mid-corner understeer that they had. And it's totally been redesigned in quite a few different areas, and Murray Bunn's going to keep developing the car. So Dick Johnson Racing are very excited about it.
Stephen Richards, meanwhile, is catching this group. He's sitting back there in 6th position. Look at Stevie Richards, the Valvoline Commodore. He's picking his way up through this top 10. He's up in the top 6. Incredible stuff. But, yeah, just following up what you were saying, Lee, the most visual difference you'll see in the Shell Helix Ford number 17 is the driving position when you look at the car in side view. John Bow sitting almost behind the B-pillar. So the very rearward driving position, which seems to be common practice in touring car racing now. You can see he's right back in the seat. Extend the steering column out. And there is John Bow, hard at work. Top touring car drivers in the country. We've got some telemetry from the Shell 17 Ford, so you can see exactly what's going on, the working inside this car. There's your speed, your road speed on the left-hand side, 230 kilometres an hour shifting back, revs. with the rev limit up to 7,500 RPM. There's your gear selection down there. And you'll see the braking sign flash on whenever John hits that middle pedal. So you're riding with John Bowe, and you can feel every pulse of this V8 monster.
Shell Helix in-car camera. John Bowe, the man that was involved in that three-way dice for this year's Shell Australian Touring Car Championship.
We go back to John. Look at this tremendous statistics coming out of the Shell Ford. Revs up in 5th gear. Will pull 6th as he heads up toward the top of Holden Rise. Look at the road speed there, 242. Shifting back to 5th as he comes down. Let's have a listen to John Bowe as he works away at the wheel.
Just a fantastic sound from inside that big V8 Ford. Here comes Perkins. The outside run in the Castrol Commodore. Larry has come right up alongside, and he's in fact gone past John Bowe. So with a big roar from the crowd, Larry in front of his home crowd, he has moved up into that 3rd position behind Greg Murphy, now ahead of John Bowe. Perkins is on the charge from 11th up into 3rd.
Call him the Castrol slingshot. That was a fantastic run out of that corner. Really sprung out of the corner on a Brock straight. Carried that speed all the way past. John Bowe did not have an answer for him. Perkins had him covered by halfway down the straight, nailed him under brakes, and now he moves up into that critical 3rd position. So now it's Alan Jones still in control, building that lead over Murphy in 2nd. He's out to 8 seconds now, the lead between 1st and 2nd, and then Larry Perkins sitting back about 6 seconds behind the Holden Racing Team car.
That little particular battle there has closed right up because Johnson's now right up behind Bowe. We have a look at our race leader, Alan Jones, and the Komatsu Pertec Falcon. He is just going so well on lap 37. There's still a long way to go. This is Jonesy's 12th Sandown appearance, and he hasn't had a great deal of luck over the past 11 times that he's competed in the endurance race here at Sandown. In fact, he's retired 7 out of those 11 times, so he'll be looking to change that. And he's never won the Sandown 500, Mark, so...
The way he sweeps across onto that wet line, just preserving those tyres. He knows he's still got a long way to go. It's not costing him any speed. He's still the fastest man on the track. That's very, very clever driving, the way he's making those tyres hang together, keeping the temperatures down by running them through that water, because they are a very soft compound tyre.
That shows you how far Greg Murphy is behind. We're giving you time earlier on, around about 6 seconds. That was we saw it visually there. Quite a bit of ground between Alan Jones and Greg Murphy. John Smales.
Yeah, lying in 12th position, Mark Larkham in the Mitre 10 Falcon has just come to the pits and put the car away. Doesn't mean it's out of the race, just away. Andrew Medecki, co-driver, what's happened?
We're investigating the cause. The car has slowed down. It could be a dip problem or a gearbox problem, we think. The engine appears to be okay. So we're checking out now that we want to keep on running for the sake of Mitre 10, who are fantastic sponsors.
During the spin, it took a lot of mud into the air intakes. Could that have caused the loss of power?
No, we monitor that on our computers in the pits, and while we had a 10-degree rise in temperature, that's completely within acceptable bounds.
John Smales with the Holden pit report there, and that's disappointing for both Mark Larkham and Andrew Medecki after qualifying the Mitre 10 Falcon on the front row. Meanwhile, his teammate is leading the way. Alan Jones has got quite a comfy run, lap 38 of 161. Jones is looking good.
Well, that'll be a bit of a worry for Ross and Jim Stone, who prepare these two cars, both the Mitre 10 Ford and this car for Alan Jones Racing, the Komatsu Falcon. Problem there. Let's hope Jones can go through without any sort of mechanical or technical hitch. There's your leaderboard. There's 9 through to 12. Tremendous battles right up and down through the field. The beauty of V8 supercar racing is, particularly as the years wear on, the teams are getting better and better at what they do. And that's making the competition tighter and tighter. 38 laps into this race. The top 10 cars are covered by 30 seconds. Quite phenomenal. Here's the Shell duo. John Bowe now. Larry Perkins attacked him for a number of laps. He's got through. Now he's coming under attack from Stephen Johnson.
We were saying earlier, Mark, or I was saying earlier that Stephen had a dreadful start to the year when he was racing in New Zealand. He was racing in the Trans Am series over there and broke his leg quite badly. He's come back from that, and he's doing very, very well. He pulls out of the draft, has a look up the outside of John Bow. No opportunity there, and looming in the background is another Stephen, another son of a famous race driver, Stephen Richards, the Valvoline Cummins Commodore.
I'll tell you what, that time around, Stephen Richards in the Valvoline car is the fastest man on the track. He's just done a 1:23.37. That's quicker than our race leader, Alan Jones. So the setup on the Valvoline Cummins Commodore, Gary Rogers Motorsport car, is working an absolute treat in these changeable conditions.
Speaking of working, they just work flat out all year during the racing season. We'll talk more about that later. Bright and Jones, they are the lead combination. Murphy, Perkins, Bow, and Stephen Johnson. We have a look back, 6 through 10. It's Stevie Richards on the charge. Gardner, Finnegan, Faulkner, and Noski will be back on Network 10 after this.
It's brought to you by Windscreens O'Brien.
And what a start it was. There's the 05 Commodore of Peter Brock on pole in a very wet day at Sandown. Marvellous reception from the crowd. A valedictory for Brock. They named the main straight Brock Straight after the great man. But unfortunately, nasty things would have happened a little ways down the track. We'll come to that in just a moment. It was Alan Jones, the big mover early. He took John Bow. Great manoeuvre, moved up on the inside of Glenn Seaton there and was putting pressure. As you see, Jones and Larkham had a little collection there. They spun off. Larkham was on the front row, now in the pits, probing the car to find out why it lost its power. Peter Brock also in the pits, throttle cable problems. Disastrous day for the man that most of the people here came to see. In front of his hometown crowd, Brock has since rejoined the race. Murphy takes the lead. Murphy and Lowndes, defending champions here. And so HRT was still very much in the Tickford 500. Seaton in the pits with air brake problems. Air in the brakes and pumping the pedal to bleed them. Jones and Longhurst in a duel back on track. Jones takes over and moves into second place. That was the start of a move backwards for Tony Longhurst. He's now 13th in the race, and then Jones took Murphy to lead the Tickford 500, and he still does. Peter Brock got back into the event, 10 laps down, only to slide off moments after rejoining the race. So it was Jones in front from Murphy. Larry Perkins in third after taking John Bow in a marvellous manoeuvre on Brock Straight. Incredible stuff here in the Tickford 500. And in the break, Stephen Johnson has taken fourth place. Stephen Richards fifth, pushing John Bow back to sixth. And we'll have a look at now where many of our great pictures today are coming from. The Whitman's Chocolates Lightship. There it is, a marvellous view, and that is where the camera is on not a wonderful day to be up in the sky here at Sandown, but nevertheless the racing on the ground is sensational.
Alan Jones is the man who continues to do the business, but how about the young guys? Stephen Richards, the Valvoline Cummins Commodore, has moved up into the top 5. He's in fact in 4th position and just running red hot on lap 44 of 161. So a little over the quarter of the way through the race, and this would just be so good to see Stephen Richards and the entire Gary Rogers team get what they deserve and a good result in the Tickford 500.
Well, the 3 fastest men on the track at the moment are all on Bridgestone tyres. Alan Jones, he's doing a 23.4. Stephen Richards just on a 23.5. And John Faulkner in the better electrical cars just on a 23. He's just clocked up at 24.7 that time around. But then the 3 fastest cars on that previous lap, and Stephen Richards particularly brilliant in this car. The Valvoline Cummins Commodore, prepared by Gary Rogers Motorsport under the team management of Mike Exel. Mike, very much a hands-on sort of team manager, builds the engines, does a lot of the development work and the construction of the car, and Stephen Richards particularly doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. There's plenty of times we've been around the garage and he's had his feet poking out from underneath the car.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about the team because they work so hard. Not only do they compete in the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship in the V8 Supercars, they also compete in the Australian Super Touring Championship. So they virtually just go from one race meeting to the next. They work flat out. They only have one transporter. They've got to return to Melbourne, unload the transporter, reload it with the other car and the other sets of gear, and off they go again. So for, say, 8 or 9 months of the year, they are very, very busy people.
There's our elapsed time. We're just over 1 hour into the Tickford 500, lap 45, 1 hour, 4 minutes into this race. So you can see we've got a long, long, long way to go. We haven't even got to our first brake changes yet, and even our first fuel stop, which should be happening in in about the 53, 54 lap bracket, so that'll be very exciting.
Well, we quite often talk about how much this guy, Alan Jones, of the Komatsu Pertec Falcon, likes being out in front. It's right where he is at the moment, and he is really doing a good job of it. He's got a 10-second buffer, a 10-second lead over Mobile Holden Racing Team's Greg Murphy, who's also doing a good job in second position, just holding it steady, just consolidating, and that really is the philosophy and the way to attack these endurance races. You can see Tony Longhurst in the background there of that shot. Tony has now fallen one lap down, and he'll be a little bit disappointed.
And behind him, coming through the spray now, is the fastest man on the track. Just behind this bunch, Larry Perkins in the Castrol Commodore. He's just dropped into the 1 minute 22 second bracket, a 22.99. So the track's starting to dry out again, and the Dunlop's working particularly well under those conditions.
Well, I was talking with David Siegel, the Shell Helix publicity guy yesterday, their PR person, and we were talking about earlier this year in Western Australia at the Barbagallo circuit where it was wet and it was drying, and he said the Dunlops are just so good, and he said if those conditions come tomorrow, well, he said you can guarantee our cars are going to be going all right.
Greg Murphy is about to feel the pressure from Larry Perkins as they come through some slower traffic. Look at the amount of ground that Larry Perkins has made up of Murphy in that half a lap. They squeeze on the inside of the Castrol Cougars Commodore, driven by Melinda Price and Karen Brewer, and Larry Perkins right hand over fist. He's nailed the back bumper of this car. He is really the fastest man on the track, no two ways about it.
Let's keep it in mind, he started in 11th position and he's now challenging for that second spot. The Castrol Commodore. Perkins' engineering entry is really red hot.
Well, the tyre engineers have been doing a good job. Plenty of competition amongst brands. Alan Jones, the fastest man on Bridgestones. The 22s, he just did a bit of traffic there, jumped into the 23s. On a clear lap, these guys are running in the 1 minute 22 second bracket, which proves the track is drying out, continuing to dry out. And both the Bridgestone and the Dunlop wet weather compound is working well in these conditions.
Well, while we're getting a little bit excited about Larry reeling in Murphy, I don't think you're going to see too much of a struggle from Murphy if things get really hot and Larry's climbing all over him, because there's still a long way to go. Still a really long way to go. Up onto the back straight. Lap 47. There's the split from Alan Jones back to Greg Murphy. A little over 13 seconds, so quite a handy margin. Wasn't that long ago that I mentioned to you it was 10 seconds, so AJ is clearing out.
Yep, 13 seconds, 13.05 over Murphy, this man in 1.5. Larry Perkins right behind him. Stephen Richards continuing his charge. He's some 20 seconds behind Alan Jones at the moment. He's getting plenty of speed over the Valvoline Cummins Commodore consistently. One of the top 3 or 4 fastest cars on the track.
Greg finished 4th in this year's Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. He was a little bit disappointed with that because he was expecting to be number 1. He wanted to be number 1. That was his aim, like every other driver. He had a few ups and downs. An interesting thing to look at is that he won 6 races throughout the year. Glenn Seaton, who ended up being the champion, won 10 races. So Greg was certainly on the pace when everything was going right. He was just dogged by some troubles. Here's the entry, Bruce Williams, the Simcoe entry, Bruce Williams and Paul Gover. Coming on through, the Hossack Ellery entry. Then we come to our leader now, the Komatsu Pertec Falcon. Alan Jones leads the way. And Mark, how must Jason Bright be feeling at the moment? Watching Alan out in front, he's thinking, this is just going to be fantastic. I'm stepping into the lead car when we change.
Yeah, plenty of responsibility on his shoulders, but he's a guy with an enormous amount of experience, young Jason Bright. He almost won the American Formula Ford 2000 Championship at his first attempt last year. Just got beaten in the final round. For a young Aussie to go over there, compete at that level, was very, very impressive. Barry Sheen.
Yeah, Christian, congratulations on winning the Formula 4. What did you say to the old man before he went out?
Oh, he basically told me how to drive in the wet this morning around here, and pretty much he's showing just how good those lines are.
All right. Kids, I don't know. Back to you, Bob.
Yeah, indeed. A definite chip off the old block. Young Christian Jones, 18 years of age. His father turns 50 this year. And plenty of skill being shown at both ends of the age spectrum. Alan Jones just attacking in that way he always did. Anyone who followed this man's Formula 1 career, he almost seemed like a second wind when he got into the car, and he would just drive some absolutely blinding laps. Incredibly aggressive, hard racer, and he's never backed off throughout a very, very good career.
To give you an indication of how quickly that Alan is going, and the Conway Monahan entry just falling off the side of the track there. They've obviously gone off before that. Look at the mud.
doing a bit of rally crossing there. I think it's Gavin Monahan was doing the first stint in this car.
Yes, yeah.
Ex-Dick Johnson Racing, EB Falcon. Look at this. Whoa, he's right off the line. HSV replay takes you on this ride. The Cadillac Productions Falcon. Ex-John Trimble car, ex-Dick Johnson Racing. Has done a few miles and is going to do a few more. But unfortunately, covered in a lot of dirt there. Let's hope the car's not damaged.
Going to need a good wash after that.
So the Sumoco Commodore, Bruce Williams, Paul Gober, just in front of Alan Jones here as he tries to pick his way through the traffic. He wants to keep up this momentum that he's built. Tremendous lead, just over 14 seconds now on Murphy and the Holden Racing Team Commodore. So Jones is blitzing him. It's just been one continuous surge toward the front from the moment this race has started, and he has not relented. Best lap of 1:22.71. That was a few. Actually, he's just done that. He's just fired up a 1:22.71. So when he gets some clear traffic ahead of him, this car is very, very quick.
Just coming past Bruce Williams there. Bruce starting to prove himself as a very diverse driver, competing in the Car Series in the the Australian Super Speedway Series. He did this year in the Formula Holden, and now he's entered the ranks of V8 supercars. So a name to watch out for there, Bruce Williams.
Good battle here too, and Bruce Williams, I think, just waving through. Oh, Darren Hossack waving his fist. So there must have been a little coming together there as they break the Shell corner, and they managed to get through unscathed. 05 back in the race, but a long, long way back, 23rd position. Peter Brock, our race leader Jones, is on 49 laps. This car on 39 laps, 10 laps down. Boy, oh boy, what a disappointment for the big Sandown crowd who came in here to see Peter Brock off. They're hoping to see him go out on a winning note.
It was good. Peter was just so determined that he was going to get back out on the track when they pushed the car into the garage. He did not get out of the car, stayed buckled in. He was just absolutely determined that he was going to continue this race. His final race here at Sandown, his final endurance race here at Sandown in the Tickford 500. At the moment he's 10 laps down with a lot of work to do. At least he is out on the track.
Just extraordinary how his luck has turned around. Just meanwhile, we hear from the pits that Alan Jones is planning to come into the first of his scheduled stops in about 4 laps. We'll watch that very closely. It'll be the first of the official stops, and that should be pretty much bang on target.
Well, we're on lap 50. Still plenty to go. 111 laps left to run. We're getting through them reasonably quickly. What's happened has already happened. We stay on the 05 Commodore. Peter Brock equaling Alan Moffat's record, and it is a record of how many times he's competed here in the endurance race at Sandown. 28 times. This is Peter's 28th appearance at Sandown.
His teammate Greg Murphy. Now, he was under maximum attack from Perkins just a while ago. Perkins caught him hand over fist, was right on the bumper, but he seems to have responded. Looking at the lap times, he's matching Perkins lap for lap and managing to hold this gap. So Murphy's really got the hammer down. The car must be working reasonably well. Lap 51. We're getting very close to that first pit stop. And there's a lot of intrigue to know which teams are going to change their brake pads in the first stop or the second stop. Should be an absolute flurry of activity. All the cars coming in about that lap window.
Murphy coming up on Gavin Monahan. He's going to have to try and work his way past him fairly quickly and not give an advantage to Larry and get stuck behind Gavin. Coming through XR8 corner at the top end of the circuit. There's Gavin Monahan in the 79 Cadillac Productions entry, and you can see Larry Perkins has got his way past Bruce Williams. Just the back end getting a little bit taily there under brakes. He's starting to catch up on Murph. Seaton has gone off the circuit. No harm done though, he just comes straight back on. Oh, there is harm done indeed. Have a look at the front spoiler.
Yeah, well, he's just ripped the under tray off the front of the car. That's a very critical part of the aerodynamic balance of these cars. Once you take that front under tray away, it means you've got maximum downforce from the rear and virtually no grip on the front, and that'll make the car very, very hard to drive. Let's have a look at that on the replay. HSV replay takes you on a wild ride across the country. Bang, there goes that spoiler. Seaton is having an absolute shocker. Just things are going from bad to worse. Not the build-up he'd like to the Primus 1000 on October 19.
Well, when that happened, he was in 14th position, 2 laps down on Alan Jones.
Let's have a listen to, I'll be able to hear what he's saying to his team manager. Quiet, Alan Jones now. Here's our race leader, and everyone's waiting with bated breath to see when this man decides to come into the pits. If he comes in bang on 54 laps, that'll be right on schedule to do it in 2 fuel stops.
Well, we're talking about co-drivers and young Jason Bright, the newly crowned Australian Formula Holden champion, and he's got a lot of pressure on him and a lot of responsibility. But, Mark, I think he's really going to handle it quite well because he handled those extreme wet conditions. Here we go, on board the windscreens O'Brien in-car camera. This is Glenn Seaton. There's going to be a driver change by the looks of things. Glenn undoing himself and getting out of the car. David Parsons will step into the Ford Credit Falcon. Let's go down to Barry Sheen.
Yeah, well, obviously Glenn's destroyed the spoiler when he went off, and I'll just have a quick look around this if there's any other damage. No, it looks pretty much a routine change. Parsons going into the car. Lee trying to stay out of the way. No, I can't see any other damage here. It's
Okay, thanks, Baz. We've got car 15, second place man into the pits. Now they're all coming in. Big racks of changes. Looks like there may be a pad change going on the front there. So a lot of the teams, certainly the Holden Racing team, electing to change the front brake pads in this first stop. Get that out of the way as early as you can. Here's a replay. Perkins ducking down the inside of Murphy. Murphy obviously aware that look at that. There's been contact between them too. Bang! Bit of battle damage on the passenger door, but they managed to squeeze through relatively unscathed. Bit of panel damage. Let's hope it hasn't done any damage to the running gear. Meanwhile, Murphy still in the pits. Castrol Commodore in there too. Larry Perkins swapping over to Russell Ingall. So a hive of activity down there on pit lane at the moment. Brake pad change being affected there now on the front wheels. So a lot of the teams electing to go for a pad change in this first stop. Get that messy thing out of the way as soon as you can. Here's our race leader, Alan Jones, into the pit. Barry Sheen.
yeah, I'm saying, boy, you want to see the brake dust off the front of this thing. Jonesy's been really pasting the brakes, and guys, they're changing the pads. They've elected to go for a pad change. It's a mandatory change, and there's no need to change the brake pads because of wear. You know, it's just in the regulations that it's a mandatory change to give us a little bit of action. And they also said in the scrutineers said that make sure that you don't have a dummy caliper on. You see there the caliper that the guy's working on. Well, you could fit a dummy one on the front of it that wasn't being used. It wouldn't get hot. You see the guys using those sort of big king-size tweezers, if you like, to really hot stuff. You reckon it's hot getting out the oven. This is just, these brake pads are up sort of 600 degrees centigrade, and they've got to change one. Oh dear, you can imagine what that's like on the old fingers.
Jason Bright sitting in the car. Meanwhile, you see Barry Sheen there on the spot. Those piping hot brakes. Those gloves trying to keep the fingers from getting burnt. Those little spreaders there. Push the pistons, 4 pistons, 6 pistons back into the caliper. So they can get these new fresh pads in. And wind these lock nuts up. There should be 2 on the back of that AP caliper. Go for the second one. And hopefully they'll be on their way pretty soon. It's a long time consuming business, that. If you can get away with it without any sort of drama, it's a real plus in a race like this.
Well, there seemed to be a little bit of trouble at the beginning of that pad change there, Mark. There was a little bit of a delay. There's Jason Bright, young Jason Bright, sitting in there ready to go. The Komatsu Pertec Falcon is out and back onto the circuit with a change of driver. Young Jason Bright has taken over the reins, and there is the Crick Fitzgerald entry into the sand. And we, at the moment, are unawares of whether there has been a driver change, whether that's Peter Fitzgerald or Terry Finnegan. It looks like it could be Terry Finnegan, who is sitting in the car there in the sand trap.
Oh, Bargwanna, Jason Bargwanna in trouble too. He was just coming toward, sorry, not Jason Bargwanna, it'd be Mark Noski, I think, is it? Let's see if they made their driver change. Yeah, Noski's still in the car. So, just coming up toward their change, and Noski's got into trouble. So, all sorts of drama here. Barry Sheen's with Alan Jones, who's just stepped out of the Komatsu Ford.
Yeah, I'm with AJ sweating a bit. That's good stuff, AJ.
I wonder why, Baz. You never used to sweat, did you?
How's it all going?
The epitome of fitness.
Oh, shut up. No, good going.
Yeah, not bad. The car's really going well. The Bridgestones are just fantastic. They're really hanging in there. And, you know, I can't fault the car, really.
It did look as if you...
the pit stop, but I can't fault the car.
Yeah, what happened in the pit stop?
Fuck it if I know.
Oh, right, yeah, technical term there. It looked earlier on in the race when she got past Murphy as if you were doing a sensible thing and going off on the wet and really looking after the tyres.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know what those wets are like. They go off real quick smart if they overheat. So I was just trying to find all the wet patches to keep them cool.
Words of wisdom there.
Well,
so do you reckon you're going to do it?
I learned it all from you, mate.
All right, enough of this.
Alan Jones, he was very happy with the run, perhaps not so happy with the pit stop there, but They did the best thing that they possibly could, and they were mentioning caution and being careful, and it's exactly what this young guy, Jason Bright, was doing. Larry Perkins was just charging through on the inside. Rather, it would have been Russell Ingall charging through on the inside. Jason Bright just said, yeah, no worries, I'll let you through, I'll take it easy. There's Russell Ingall. They've had the driver change, top up of fuel, new tyres. The Shell Helix race score, it looks like this. Richards, Johnson, then we go. Dick Johnson, it should be Craig Fair that perhaps has got in the car. Crompton, Wynn Percy, we go back 6 through 10. Finnegan, Mazira, should be John Trimble in the car now. Ellery, Bargwanna, and Murphy back after this.
Welcome back to the Tickford 500, where Dick Johnson has just been extricated from a very tough position. He was stuck on the ripple strip, now back in the race, and positions are everywhere at the moment because we're at that critical stage of the first tyre stop, and in fact for some drivers the first brake pad stop, the forced brake pad change. At the moment it reads Richards, Johnson, Gardner, Hossack and Noski in the top 5, but they are yet to pit. Craig Lowndes is down in 6th place. And we'll return to commentary as we have another look at the predicament of the number 17 Shell Helix Falcon.
Well, this was the situation. Lowndes on the inside, Dick Johnson on the outside, and then Dick finally gave him room to come on through, but he was drifting wide, and the Shell Helix Falcon number 17 just went off the circuit. Dick kept the foot down, and he just kept those back wheels turning. He didn't want to get stuck there, and he's been able to turn it round, get out of there, but the worst was yet to come. Keep your eyes on this, because Dick, yep, okay, I'm not going to get bogged. I keep on going, and as you can see, he hasn't taken his foot off the accelerator. Meanwhile, someone else exited off the circuit. Now have a look at this. He's come up onto the ripple strip, and he's just landed high and dry. He's high-centered the car and hasn't been able to get it off there. Look at that. The tyres just spinning on that very greasy surface. And, of course, the officials had to come out and help him. Mark, unbelievable.
Yeah, very lucky for him too, though. They didn't have to bring the safety car out. Should have given an advantage, handed an advantage to those teams that haven't been in for their first fuel stop and brake pads. More information from the pits, John Smales.
Yeah, and indeed those pit stops which took the brake pad changes are now over for the leading competitors. 1 minute and 5 seconds for the Murphy Lowndes car, 1 minute and 14 seconds for Perkins. Murphy's come into the pits and he hasn't had nice words to say about Larry Perkins.
Oh, you know, Larry probably just got a little bit anxious, I'd say. I don't know why, but he obviously was coming into the pits pretty soon. I don't know why he bothered doing it. He went on the inside and sort of slid in the side of my car. So, you know, we're both okay. We're both still out there, so it wasn't too much of a drama.
Are you going to take it up with him?
No. It was his problem. He's got a problem with it. He'll come and see me, but it's not worth worrying about.
You came in on wets, but you've gone out now on dries that have been cut to at least squeegee the water. Is that the right decision?
I think so. There's parts of the circuit that are still very, very damp, and especially the new sealed sections of the circuit, and they're very slippery, and you've got to be very careful on them. So I think at this stage there's still enough moisture on the circuit to warrant some grooves.
Well, what a good attitude, what a good way to look at it. He said, oh, well, it happened, it was an incident, let's get on with it. It's still a long way to go. There's 101 laps left in the Tickford 500, and this is a good battle going on here. Craig Lowndes is really on the pace straight away, Mark.
Yep, Grand Slam winner from 1996, Shell Australian Touring Car Championship, this race and the big one at Bathurst last year. A real Grand Slam for himself, and Greg Murphy is back in the seat of this V8 after a very, very tough character-building season in European Formula 3000 and really enjoying his time back with the Holden Racing team. He sneaks inside the Shell 18 Ford there. So we're just waiting for the timing to trip up. We'll get to the bottom of these pit stops. Who's gone in for fuel, brakes and what have you. But at the moment, still reading Stephen Johnson. Still out there, 60 laps, stretching it on this first fuel load.
Great pictures from the Whitman's light ship here as they go down the back section of the circuit, the very fast back straight. Lowndes, you can see that there was quite a bit of damage on the inside left. The left side of the number 15 HRT Commodore. That's a great shot, up nice and high. This is Lowndes coming on, lights ablaze, coming through this fast change of direction. He's been competing in the European Formula 3000 series this year. It's been an up and down year for last year's Golden Boy, Australian V8 scene. His best result in the European Formula 3000 Championship has been 4th. We've got a bit of a fire down there at the Gary Rogers pit, just the exhaust, some excess fuel being burnt off. Now, Jim Richards would be inside that car. Stephen Richards out. Well, at the moment, we don't really have a good insight into whether they in fact changed the brakes. Here's the Castrol Cougars car. Melinda Price, Karen Brewer, they are in. Change of tyres, change of brakes, and change of driver.
Okay, strapping in there, driver change for the Castrol Cougars. Let's take a break. Tickford 500. Shell Helix Racecourse shows your positions at the moment. Stephen Johnson leads this race. Gardner and Crockett, they haven't pitted yet, either as Hossack. Bargwana and Noski in fourth position. Stephen Richards holds on in fifth. Now with Jimmy Richards at the wheel. Murphy and Lowndes. Lowndes at the wheel of 15. Perkins and Ingle, Jones and Bright, Longhurst O'Brien, Faulkner and Percy. We'll be back in just a sec.
Welcome back. Network 10's exclusive coverage of the Tickford 500 from Sandown. You're watching Stephen Johnson's pit crew replacing the spoiler. He had a little meeting with the wall as he came in for his first pit stop after 63 laps of this race. Craig Lowndes out on course as the unofficial race leader. Hossack is technically in front of him in first place, but we believe is either in pit lane or will be about to pit very shortly. But Craig Lowndes has already pitted, of course. There's been a driver change. Murphy started for that team, and Lowndes is now unofficially the leader of the Tickford 500. Russell Ingle would be up there in second place, and just behind them, well, it's close. Jimmy Richards is there, and the placings all mixed up, of course, because they've come in for tyre and brake pad changes. But right now, this is Stephen Johnson's car.
Absolute frustration there. They're trying to get it right. They had it set. Here is the replay of Stephen Johnson going off the circuit, and bang, he just smashed that front spoiler straight off. Went down in the dip, heading up into XR8 corner, and that spoiler just came straight off, and obviously making life very difficult for Stephen.
Hopefully he hasn't done any damage under there too. There's a lot of important ancillary equipment for the engine under there, oil coolers for engine and gearbox, all sorts of stuff underneath or behind the rear spoiler section, so hopefully nothing has been damaged there. Well, the progress of that car.
How about this, Mark? The Mobil HRT Commodore 15, Craig Lowndes, his teammate Greg Murphy. They are the defending champs of the Tickford 500, and to our calculations anyway, Lowndes is leading this race.
Well, every one of the cars competing in the Tickford 500 is fitted with a transponder in the front of the car, so we have to wait a few laps after all these pit stops as it trips up to know our true position. But certainly by our calculations, Lowndes is our new race leader. Let's go to John Smales.
I have Stephen Johnson with me right now. Stephen, what happened?
Just over the top, the tyres, as you can see, they're absolutely knackered. It's really drying out, and the tyres are just down the straight, the thing's all over the road. I got to the top, and I just bounced straight off the road, and just unfortunate. I just couldn't get it back because it was understeering quite dramatically over the top. Went off the road, tried to save the spoiler, and unfortunately couldn't, so thought we lost a bit of time.
What's the look of the damage underneath, Stephen? Are they saying there's anything that might be terminal?
No, nothing, just the spoiler. On the last quarter lap there, I still pushed it pretty hard, and the steering's fine, everything's great. I had a quick look, the brake ducts look like they're intact, so see if we can make a bit of time from here, eh?
Well, 4 times New Zealand touring car champion Craig Baird is now behind the wheel of the 18 Shell Helix Falcon, and he is a very handy driver indeed. He drove Super Touring in South Africa last year. He's now a BMW test driver, and he is now part of the Shell team for the 2 endurance races. He'll do a good job.
He's thoroughly looking forward to this run too, the 27-year-old from Hamilton in New Zealand, now living up on the Gold Coast so he can pursue his Australian driving commitments. Not only a New Zealand touring car champion, 3 times New Zealand Formula Atlantic champion, a New Zealand Formula 4 champion, of course 3 times New Zealand Grand Prix winner, a guy with enormous experience for one so young, and he's really enjoying his opportunity with Dick Johnson Racing. Maybe not the ultimate situation to step into, but looks like the boys have taped on that spoiler very firmly, and Stephen Johnson's call is right. There's no damage to the mechanicals of the car. They can continue to grind on.
Well, he was going so well. Stephen Johnson was just having his best drive. He's competed in 3 so far. Here's Neil Crompton going around the outside of Jim Richards. And interesting, we in the ad break, we saw the Gardner-Crompton car come in for a pit, and they put slick tyres on the car. So we don't know what all of the other cars are on, what particular tyres they're on. We definitely know the Gardner-Crompton entry is on slick tyres. We'll wait and see what effect that has in terms of lap time.
Well, the interesting thing is you look at the speed of the Lowndes car. They went out on a lighter grooved wet, or a grooved slick, I should say, with a block pattern. They're now doing a 1-minute 19-second lap. So maybe they've got the tyre choice just right for these half-dry, half-wet conditions. Lowndes very quick.
Well, Crompton has only just done a couple of laps since he pitted. We're on lap 67 of 161, so Neil will take a couple of laps just to settle in. He's got Jimmy Richards all over the back of him, though. We see coming into the pit the Holden Young Lions entry. 1 hour 36 gone in the Tickford 500. This is their change. Jason Bargwanna will step into the car. He's already in. They haven't wasted any time at all. Noski assisting there. Let's see how this guy goes. He qualified the car, put it on 5th position on the grid. He's a very handy young driver.
You can see that very aggressive tread pattern on the tyres they've taken off. They're still going for a groove tyre, but in fact a bigger block pattern on the tread face. That means it's more tolerant to dry conditions. It's less susceptible to overheating, and the block pattern burring over, which is very, very difficult to drive on. So Jason Bright gives the thumbs up. Work continuing on the Young Lions Commodore. Big opportunity for Jason Bargwanna. Did a great job in qualifying, put the car on 5th, right up there in the middle of the top 10. Noski took the opening stint. Now Jason Bargwanna gets to prove his medal in the thick of the Tickford 500.
Holden in-car camera. Jason Bargwanna just settling himself in. The Holden Young Lions and also Murphy and Lowndes, but you're taking these endurance races very seriously. Last week they did a 5-day stint of intensive heat training, and Bargwanna's lost it already.
I don't believe it. First time out, first corner. He's only gone a few hundred metres and the conditions have caught him out. Let's see he can avoid doing what Dick Johnson did, riding over this ripple strip and getting high-centred in the middle of the car. Boy, oh boy. Well, that's one each, because we saw Noski get in trouble later in his stint. He spun it coming over Holden Hill. Now Jason Bargwanna on the HSV replay. How ironic's that? HSV replay takes you aboard the HSV back car. Jason Bargwanna does a full 360 as he gets out onto the grass, and he just kept going.
He'll be very disappointed with himself on that. He's very much a perfectionist, and first time out, the first corner he faced, and turned it round. He'll settle down now, take stock of what he's got, and get on with the job.
Well, it's just so typical of those conditions. All day it's been happening. It happened in the support races before the start of the Tickford 500, and we've seen it catching out plenty of the V8 supercar drivers as well. That new bit of bitumen, really very slippery.
We're talking about the guys undertaking an intensive heat training program to get themselves used to the heat inside the cars in the endurance races. So they've been working hard. Here is Ingle right up behind, and now moves up alongside, tucked in behind there. Terry Finnegan on board the Alcare air conditioning Commodore.
Oh, he's really giving Russell Ingle a run for his money. In the Castrol Commodore, there's bits of dirt and stuff falling out of the Young Lions Commodore after Jason Bargwanna put it off in the mud. But fortunately, continuing, he'll dial himself in, try and get himself into the groove again. Not a good way to start his first stint in endurance racing. So we're still showing Darren Hossack, the Hossack Commodore, with Stephen Ellery at the wheel as the leader of this race. 68 laps completed. So we thought he may have been into the pits, but apparently not. Still out there leading Craig Lowndes. There's another car in trouble down at that treacherous Shell corner. Oh boy, oh boy.
And Bright's off as well. Jason Bright and Neil Crompton have gone right off after Shell corner. Crompton rejoins. Keep in mind he's on slicks at the moment.
Absolute chaos down there as the field trying to sort themselves. They're dragging so much dirt and garbage onto the track, it's probably compounding the problem. Someone may have dropped a bit of oil down there or something, because there's so many cars going off there now. These conditions not nearly as wet as they were earlier in the race, but it's catching everyone out.
Terry Finnegan there, just in behind the Bottle Magic entry. That's John Trimble. He's right up behind Neil Crompton. Now, according to our timing monitor, Crompton was in 4th position until that little spin. The Coca-Cola Donut King Commodore. Crompton returning especially for this race. On the inside goes Terry Finnegan. It was on the inside of Trimble, and Finnegan's on fire at the moment. The 49 Alcare Commodore right up behind Crompton, saying Crompton returned especially for the race from the USA, where he ended up finishing third in the North American Touring Car Championship. Of course, he'll be back in October for the Primus 1000 as well.
This is a great run. Standing in for Greg Crick and the Alcare Commodore. Tremendous drive. You saw a great run from Terry in the Privateers Cup races this year in the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Hasn't been able to run in all the rounds, but given this drive with John Alcorn's Alcare Commodore, showing plenty of speed in very difficult track conditions. Crompton braking hard for Shell Corner. Look at him out in dirt and garbage. There's mud and grass and stuff all over the track. Look at it here. Really having to stay off that and picking it up in the tyres. Keeping an eye on Lowndes. Still 1:19.68. The man who continues to lead this race, the Wins Commodore of Darren Hossack and Stephen Ellery. Stephen Ellery at the wheel, still doing some tremendous 1:19.8 lap times.
Well, we should stress they have not pitted yet. To our knowledge, they haven't pitted. We'll keep you up to date with that, John Smales.
Yes, indeed. I'm standing with Fred Gibson, the man who's looking after the Hossack-Ellery pit, one of the wisest heads in the business. Fred, why haven't you pitted yet?
Yes, Darren.
Fred speaking to Darren at the mail, rather to Steve in the car. Darren ready to get in now. We're getting ready for the stop.
Coming in next lap, John. We're coming in next lap, we are, into pit stop.
Why did you take so long, Fred?
No,
Fred pushes us away, but I can tell you the reason that they haven't come in yet. He smiled at me a little while ago and said, "We've got plenty of fuel left. Why would you come in yet?"
Yeah, that'll be Fredo. One of the most cagey guys in the business. He took Mark Scaife to 2 Bathurst victories and 2 Australian Touring Car Championships. A big fan of young talent. He's bringing this guy, both these guys, Stephen Ellery and Darren Hossack, on. Tremendous start from Stephen Ellery. We saw him take 3rd position with Tony Longhurst, a great double stint at Bathurst last year. And he's doing a great opening stint in this car as well. But we know they're due to pit pretty soon. Meanwhile, big charge there from the Holden Racing Team Commodore, Craig Lowndes. He's getting plenty of speed out of that car. He's the fastest man on the track now as the Wins Commodore comes in for its stop. Stephen Ellery will change over to Darren Hossack, the rookie, in his first Enduro ride.
Into the pits they come as we were watching Ellery bring the Wins Commodore into the pits. Lowndes was coming right up on the back of Dick Johnson. So here we go. This is it. Gibson.
Sorry, Leo's going to say, but interesting to see what tyres they're going to. What are they going for? Looks like they've got another groove tyre standing beside, ready to go on the car. So Fred's not convinced yet, and the driver's not convinced yet that slicks are the way to go. With those big plies in there pushing back these 6 piston calipers. Slides in the new pads. Got the stopwatch on this, just coming up to 30 seconds. The slick stop was considered between 30 and 40 seconds. There's Stephen Ellery. Well, a big bust-up with Tony Longhurst's team earlier in the year. He's been out in the wilderness for a while, managed to do the deal to get into this car. Looks like a good call too, running with the Fred Gibson Motorsport operation. 45 seconds. That is not a bad stop. Just under 45 seconds for a pad change, 120 litres of fuel, driver change and a tyre change. Well done.
Fantastic stuff. They come out. A big moment for the young guy behind the wheel now, Darren Hossack. It's his very first Sandown 500, the Tickford 500 today. Murphy and Lowndes, they still lead the way. Hossack's just gone out, so he won't be in second anymore. Ingle, then we go to Jimmy Richards, Neil Crompton. We look 6 back through 10. Your order, there it is. Hope you're enjoying all the action here on your home of motorsport. We'll be back right after this.
The Tickford 500 from Sandown. What an amazing race, and this is a great view of it from the Whitman's Lightship, courtesy of Whitman's Chocolates. There it is, and spectacular stuff it has been. The final pit stop has been made of the first round of pit stops, and that was the Hossack car, and they've only lost 6 placings. They were unofficially first. They've dropped down to 7th after a 45-seconder, and that was about 15 seconds ahead of most of the other crews. Lowndes is now officially the race leader from Russell Ingle, and Jimmy Richards makes up the top 3.
And Lowndes is about to put a lap on Darren Hossack. There he is, right behind the Wins Commodore. There it is, from first back to second. 42 seconds from Lowndes back to Russell Ingle. And here goes Craig Lowndes on the inside of Darren Hossack. He puts a lap down on the Wins Commodore. So Lowndes is just going so well at the moment. Could it be back-to-back victories for Craig Lowndes and Greg Murphy?
Well, certainly looking that way, the way they're charging along at the moment. They've got a very good setup on the car. It's very, very quick, no matter what sort of tyre combination they put on, and it's just producing the right sort of lap times. Lowndes in the 1-minute 21-second bracket. We saw Crompton go out on a complete slick. That means it didn't have any cuts in it at all. And they're running in about the same sort of time too, but that's a Yokohama tyre on the Coke car and a Bridgestone on the leading Lowndes car. So a real tyre battle happening here, not only amongst the tyre technicians, but the team managers and drivers as well.
Castrol Commodore number 11, Russell Ingall, sitting in second position. Keep in mind, it's been a terrific job by those guys. They qualified 11, and they are now sitting in second position on lap 76. This is Russell Ingall.
See Russell heading off the ideal line as well. It's getting quite dry on the racing line now, so he was heading off to try and find any sort of puddles he can. Maybe the temperature's coming off on these tyres. They're starting to feel a bit gummy. Starting to move around a little bit under the car. The trouble is with these tyres, they're too soft for the conditions. The rubber compound gets so hot that it actually destabilises and starts to disintegrate. And it's very, very difficult to drive a car, almost impossible to drive a car under those conditions.
Jim Richards behind the wheel now of the Valvoline Cummins Commodore. Jim sits in third position, so things are going exceptionally well for the Gary Rogers Motorsport team. There's your Shell Helix race score. Combination of Murphy and Lowndes, Gardner and Crompton. Crompton slipped back to fifth position, so whether he has had a little hiccup somewhere along the line. There he is, a couple of cars back from Jimmy Richards. Jason Bright sandwiched in the middle there. Jason is currently sitting fourth.
Watch that gap too, because it looks like certainly they're closing the gap to the Valvoline Cummins Commodore. Steve Richards handing over to his father Jim. There's Jimmy Richards. Jimmy's also turns 50 this year. A guy with enormous experience, multiple Australian touring car champion, multiple Australian Bathurst winner. A guy who's just about been there and done it all. And he's the right kind of guy to have in the car in these very difficult situations.
If you're a Tony Longhurst supporter, as we see Neil Crompton charging up on the inside of Jason Bright in the Coke Commodore, this is the battle for fourth and fifth. Bright is on the outside. He's sitting in fourth. Look at Crompton. Very aggressive up the inside, and Crompton's got him. Now, keep in mind that Crompton, to our knowledge, is the only car running on slick tyres at the moment.
Yeah, it was getting checks run up and down pit lane. From what we saw, Crompton, the Coke Wayne Gardner team, the only ones who have gone for the full slick at this stage. And it's interesting looking at their lap times, because they're pretty much equal to Craig Lowndes on a clear lap, but there's so much traffic around, it's very hard to monitor their relative performances.
Well, he was able to work his way past Jason Bright there relatively easily. He now has Jim Richards inside. He's his next target. Look how far he's pulled away so quickly from Jason Bright in the Komatsu Ford.
Yep, it's a real tyre battle out here. We hear from our chopper pilot that there may be some rain heading this way within the next 10 to 15 minutes. We'll keep an eye on that for you. There's Wayne Gardner.
Chief, how you going?
Watching on. As
it was us.
Very experienced teammate Neil Crompton, just back from the United States, who's done very well in the United States US Touring Car Championship, where he finished third, and really making a name for himself in the US. Back aboard a V8, thoroughly enjoying. I spoke to Crompton on Friday, and he said, boy, when you get back in these things, because the kick of 600 horsepower in your back, it's quite a different experience.
Let's have a look at this, Mark. The Privateers, the Shell Helix race score for those guys. It's the combination of Hossack and Ellery leading the way. The Waldock-Smith combination next. Mike Conway, Gavin Monahan, and Terry Finnegan and Peter Fitzgerald sitting in fourth position. They're circulating very quick on the circuit, but they're back in fourth. They've had a few hiccups and a few spins, but they're going very, very well. That's the Alcare Commodore in front. We're on board at the moment with Wynn Percy in the Better Electrical Fisher and Paykel entry. There's Wynn behind the wheel. He'll be back as well to compete in the Primus 1000 at Bathurst on October 19.
Well, he really is the grand old man here. 55 years of age, Wynn, born and lives in the UK. Second in the 1987 500 here with a Commodore with Alan Grice. And, of course, Bathurst winner with Alan Grice in 1990. That fabulous win by Holden Racing Team against the Turbos. And he was third at Bathurst in 1985 with Tom Walkinshaw when they brought out the XJS V12 Jaguars. Currently competing in the British GT Championship back home and thoroughly enjoying himself. And he said to me in the pits on Friday, I just love getting back to Australia and driving these big V8 things. He really gets off on it.
Well, he's got a busy time because he's not sticking around in Australia for very long. He heads back to the UK straight away. He's got to compete in the 9th round of that series. But then, as we said earlier, he will be back. Oh, he gets it all crossed up.
board with Win Percy. Lap 79 of this 161 lap race. And as you can see on that windscreen, there are spits of rain. Windscreen wipers starting to work, certainly on the Valvoline Cummins Commodore. So our chopper pilot's call was correct. And we could be able to see, or may be able to see, a lot more rain on the Sandown track in a very short period of time.
Now that's not going to work for Crompton. Crompton's been able to get past Jim Richards. He's now up into the top 3. But if that rain continues to fall, we're seeing now that the gamble to go on to slicks by the Coke team was the right one at the moment. If that rain continues to fall, that will work against them.
Yeah, we'll watch that weather with interest. We're riding with Win Percy in the Better Electrical Commodore as he comes right up behind Mike Conway's EB Falcon, one of the many privateers running in the Tickford 500 today. Sneaks past up the inside, lights ablaze, coming up behind Terry Finnegan and the Alcare Commodore. So as we saw before on that race score, the battle amongst the privateers equally as intense as it is amongst the outright contenders.
We were talking about it not so long ago. Terry Finnegan is doing a tremendous job in that Alcare Commodore. We normally see Terry run in the Sony Auto Sound Commodore, and he's teamed up with Peter Fitzgerald this weekend, and I'd imagine that it was a last-minute thing because Greg Crick was supposed to drive. He was scheduled to drive in the car with Peter Fitzgerald. He hasn't been able to compete here today due to some family reasons. And Finnegan has just done a colossal job. We're looking on screen now. Mobile HRT car number 15. This is your lead car. Craig Lowndes has stepped in. He is behind the wheel, taken over from Greg Murphy. We watch the battle here between Win Percy.
Sorry, Lee, I was going to say Holden Racing Team really have got the setup right at this moment in the race. Lowndes is just on a 1:18.8. He's the first man into the 18s. Building on that lead, look at that, it was 40-something seconds before. Now it's out to 56, almost a minute lead over Perkins Ingle in the Castrol Commodore. No doubt Larry will be having his fingers crossed for a safety car period pretty soon.
Well, that sounds pretty impressive that Lowndes has done a 1:18. The closest driver to him is the Holden Young Lions entry of Jason Bargwanna. He's done a 1:19. Now, those times may not mean anything to you around the Sandown circuit, but we'll give you comparisons to show you and to let you know who's quicker than each other. So don't worry about necessarily the time around the circuit, but listen to it. We compare. Brock is in.
Yeah, it was a real tragedy. That's a little problem with the throttle. Just approaching half distance in the Tickford 500. And they're affecting the brake change on this car. They wouldn't have done it first when they were trying to fix that throttle. Just wanted to get that car out on the track as soon as they could. Peter Brock handing over to Mark Scaife. This will be a good test for them. You can guarantee Scaife will absolutely wring this thing's neck to find any other weaknesses in the car before they head to Mount Panorama.
Well, yesterday during the top 10 shootout, we went on board with Mark Scaife when he was the last car to go out and qualify, and he just manhandled the 05 Mobile Holden Commodore around the circuit. It was almost 3/10 quicker than Mark Larkham. Scaife is on board. Oh, there goes Finnegan, and Lowndes obviously had to go around and dodge him.
Look at the amount of dirt and muck being dragged onto that corner. You've got to be very careful, not only on entry, but you've got to be very careful on exit now too. You don't want to pick up all that dirt and garbage. So Finnegan, he's showing tremendous spurts of speed in between various dramas he's having out there. Very aggressive run from the Sydney privateer.
Well, he could have a life in Speedway after road racing. He's been out there a fair bit today, but Terry, take nothing away from him. He's done a good job. There's Craig Baird. All the tape over the number 18 Shell Helix Falcon. He sits back out of the top 10 at the moment, but trying to work his way into it. The Shell Helix race score. It's Lowndes who leads the way from Russell Ingle. Neil Crompton still sits in third spot ahead of Jason Bright, and Jimmy Richards in the top 5.
In 6th, Faulkner and Percy in the Fisher and Paykel Commodore, Hossack and Ellery. Johnson and Bow in 8th position, Longhurst in 9th, Bargwanna in 10th.
We go back 11th. It is the combination of Johnson and Baird. Baird behind the wheel, then Parsons, Trimble, Waldock and Finnegan.
And getting back in the field, 16th, Conway and Monahan in the Falcon, Price and Brewer 17th, Williams Gover 18th, Connor and Dulman 19th, and Steniken in 20th position.
Screens O'Brien.